Very excited to explore into the Kabbalah of the Baal Shem Tov. We are on the last parsha of Genesis, of Bereshit. And in this parsha, as we know, it's one of the unusual, begins in a very unusual way, that it's called a closed parsha. What does it mean by closed parsha? Can you hear me, everybody? Thumbs up if yes. It's a closed parsha, and if you're online, please mute, okay? That means usually between a parsha, there's a space given, line 9 letters or another line. But here, no line, no space. In other words, the end of last week's parsha, right, which was Vayigash, and there's no breaks. It goes right into the other parsha, and they all ask why. This is handed down from Sinai. It's called the closed parsha, and Rashi brings 2 reasons. One reason was because we know that in this week's parsha, Yaakov Avinu, Jacob, our forefather, dies, and then once he dies, starts what we call the servitude in Egypt, started the slavery in Egypt. In other words, from what I heard, my son just told me, they started to hire Jews out to do work. And once they got the Jews hired out to get used to doing work, right? This one's a handyman, he's drilling, construction, ichves. So then they got him eventually to work on it, a plan to do it, that they would do it for free and become slaves. That's reason number 1. Reason number 2, which is significant for now, is because Yaakov Avinu, before he passed away, he gathered all of his children around the bed, and he was going to tell them when the end of days, when the Mashiach was going to come. He's going to tell them all about what's going to happen and how it's going to be. And then as soon as he was about to tell them, all of a sudden the lights went out. He got disconnected. The internet, the Wi-Fi was down. Okay, so in other words, he lost his prophecy and wasn't able to go ahead and give them the parsha of Mashiach, we'll call it that, the end of days. So that is why we say that the parsha is called the closed parsha. So the significance of that is, of course, the closed part, okay? And obviously God does not want the actual time of the Messiah when it's going to be revealed. Even though we have multitude of so much texts about what's going to be in those days. And I'm, God willing, I'm going to start another podcast called the Jewish Messiah Podcast. I think if it's not already out, maybe I'll start it. That I will bring all of the unbelievable texts that is brought down in all of the writings. And it's all conflicting and it's very convoluted, but at least you'll be exposed to the texts. But in any case, the idea of the Messiah was not meant to be revealed. On the other hand, there are those who do say that he just had to hide it differently. In other words, he did reveal it. It is in there, because what did he do subsequently? After he was going to tell them what's going to happen in the end of days, the lights went out, right? And then what happened was he continued and he gave all of his sons blessings, even though the first 3 really didn't get so much of a blessing. Wasn't so great, Reuben, Shimon, and Levi, yeah, thanks a lot, Dad. Okay? But there's hidden things in there. See, that's what the thing is. There's deep hidden things that we're going to see today that is in those blessings to those tribes, which is going to be what I think is the real 12-step program. How do you like that, huh? The real 12-step, because there's 12 insights. And that is going to be the catalyst, or whatever it is, contributing to the end of days. But now going in specifically on what I handed out to you in those sheets was that when Yaakov Avinu gathers them, right, and he called to them, Vayikra Yaakov el banav, and Yaakov called his sons, Vayomar, and he told them, Heasfu, gather. Va'agida lachem es asher yikre eschem bi'acharis hayomim, which and I'm going to tell you what is going to be with you in the end of days. So the Baal Shem Tov focuses on the word asher yikra. Asher yikra didn't really have to be, and he wants to pull out something quite interesting, which maybe is helpful, maybe it's not, And he says here, Jacob said, what will happen, right? I'm going to tell you what's going to happen, asher yikra. But the word yikra is a special word. because the redemption will just seem to happen, okay? Because if you look at the note, the word mikre, which really means an occurrence, an accident, happen. It'll just happen, right? It's not something which is necessarily planned. So it's like an occurrence. It has an implication of a chance happening, which, what do we say about that? That means, what does he say? The Holy Master, the Baal Shem Tov says, in the end of days, everybody's going to be busy with their work, busy whatever they're doing, right? Not thinking about it at all. And then suddenly the Mashiach, the Messiah, is going to come. So what does that say? Davar vahifuch, a thing in its opposite. That means if you're watching the door for him, that could be an ikuv, that could be an obstacle into his coming. So basically, get busy, be busy. It's okay to be busy. Yes, yearning. Yearning is so deep. Yearning is so important. We have another thing in this week's parsha, that as he's going through Yaakov Avinu, all of the 12 tribes, he gets to the tribe of Dan. And in his prophecy, because he does see things, he sees that there's got to be somebody in the tribe of Dan whose name is Shimshon, and everybody knows Samson. And he thinks, the Midrash says, he thinks that Samson, Shimshon, is going to be the Mashiach. He says, there we go, the star, yes, go. I guess he's watching Shimshon die. And then what is his reaction? His reaction is, Lishuascha kivisi Hashem. For your salvation, Lishuascha kivisi, I hope, Hashem. In other words, I hope in your salvation. And the interesting word is the word kivisi. It comes from the root kav, or mikaveh, to hope. I hope in your salvation. So Yaakov Avinu, when he saw that Shimshon had died, so he realizes, okay, so he pulls out the formula for the Mashiach to come. And the formula is, Lishuascha kivisi Hashem. This lashon of kivisi, which means I hope. Hope is not a good word for the word kivisi, okay? If you'll notice, or you'll remember in my earlier classes on Kabbalah, that we talked about the Tzimtzum. The Tzimtzum was, how God constricted himself. And after he constricted himself, the geometrical figure, the conceptual figure, was a sphere. And then he drew a line into that sphere. There's a lot of symbolism that goes around this. The sphere and the kav. Kav is called the line, like a laser beam that grew into the circle, this dark circle. We can imagine it, we can picture it. Of course, it's not that literal, but you got to have this idea as of the kav. The kav is the line. The kav, we'll call it hope, but the kav is doesn't mean hope. When a person, see, the same root of likvot is mikveh or mikaveh. Ani mikaveh, I hope, we say. But the root is also mikveh. Have you ever heard of what a mikveh is? Mikveh is the ritual bathhouse that we go into when the men go every day, or the women go when they're menstrually unclean and they want to get clean and be permissible for their husbands. That's what a mikveh is. Why is it the same? Kav, line, hope, and mikveh, a body of water to cleanse. So my son-in-law reminded me of what Rabbi Kibbutz says is when you go into a mikveh, you don't hope to come out clean. You go to this natural body of water, you expect to come out clean. You anticipate. There's a knowing there. It's a sense of surety that you go into the mikveh, you dunk into the mikveh, and you are certain that you will come out clean. So the word kav, or likvot, or I hope to your salvation, is not hope. It's an anticipation that is of certainty, okay? That's the idea. That's the energy that's going to bring the Mashiach. And that's why Yaakov Avinu said that, specifically after he saw that Shimshon was going to die. Now, there's many things, and the reason why we get into all of this, and this is why it's so important here. And I'm glad that he spoke about the Mashiach here. It's because the whole beginning thing, and the whole reason why I got into this, and the whole reason why I'm and so many other people to the Torah of the Baal Shem Tov was because of his soul ascent that he did on Rosh Hashanah. That he did this soul ascent out of his body on Rosh Hashanah, went all the way up to the hall of the Messiah, saw the Messiah, and says, when is the Master coming? And the answer was, who can tell me the answer, right? It says here, once your teachings become publicly known and revealed throughout the world, and when your well springs have overflowed beyond, imparting to others what I have taught you, okay? And you have grasped. In other words, when your teaching is spread about, boom, hey, we all want to see this world in a better place. And if you've got the keys here in the teachings of the Holy Master, the Baal Shem Tov, and he says that's when the Messiah is going to come, then it's worth definitely studying, as we're going to see very soon. Very conscious, very mindfulness. Every single thing is about developing a consciousness. There was one great story. I've tried to look it up to find it again, but I definitely remember it. Which was, he took a travel. He always did travels. He always did tours, mystery tours. I call them mystery tours. He took a student of his. He says, come on, we're going on a trip. They got on a trip. They go to some faraway place, some hillside. And alone on this hillside, just sitting by itself, was this little hut. They got off the wagon and they go to this little hut. He knocks on the door. Opens. This old woman, poor as anything, raggedy, and there's kids in the house. Right? And he sees through the crowd, through the wife and the kids, he sees an old man lying there on the floor. The guy gets up really excited and he says, oh, Shalom Aleichem, how are you? So he comes in, he sits down. The man is still sitting on the floor, basically, and they have a little conversation. And the rabbi's there about whatever, I don't know about what, it wasn't anything in the mystical things. They have a little conversation. And then the Baal Shem Tov leaves, and he's leaving with his student. And as he's leaving with his student, the student says, who was that guy? Another hidden tzaddik. He says, actually, that was the soul of the Messiah. Because every single generation, there is a potential Messiah that can come. And he is actually going to pass away today. And there's going to be another person who's going to be in his place as the potential Messiah to come. So every single generation, there's a potential Messiah or Mashiach to come. And of course, the Baal Shem Tov met him, and the guy recognized him. They recognized him because he knows what, right? But in any case, it's going to go deeper than that, okay? The big problems are that what holds back, that here we are in the footsteps of the Messiah. And one of those things, that he says very, he says, he brings from the Arizal and the Baal Shem Tov, that in the footsteps of the Messiah, there will be more urgently requesting a rectification of prayer. Tikkune tefillah. There'll be a huge urge for a fixing of tefillah, of prayer, which is, I really don't know what that means, whether it means from heaven, they'll be pushing us to pray, or whether the consciousness of man will be yearning to clarify and deepen their prayer, which that could be, which is what my first assumption was, that there'll be a people that will be wanting to clarify what prayer is and what it's about, okay? He also brings down, the Baal Shem Tov brings down, that the leaders and the heads of the community will be from the Erev Rav. We kind of know that from the Ar as well. I'm talking about the majority of leaders and heads of the community, not necessarily, I'm not talking about the non-Jews, I'm talking about the Jews, right? Not the holy rabbis of the Kehilot, but I'm talking about in those leaders, most of them will be from the Erev Rav. Who is the Erev Rav? Anybody know? The Erev Rav literally translates as the mixed multitude. Who were those guys? Who are those guys, right? So there's an argument in terms of who they were. I heard three ideas. One idea was that they were the magicians and sorcerers. They were sent by Paro. Paro sent them. Vaishlach Paro et ha'am. And Paro sent the people, which means the Erev Rav. He sent them to tag along with the Jewish people. Gee, I wonder if that was really altruistic. Okay? That was like, so obviously I see that they were sent to trip everybody up, and they succeeded because every single step of the way, when they were in the desert, they were met with calamity that was from the influence of the Erev Rav, and everybody knows that. Another version was that they were the hieroglyphic experts and the sorcerers and the magicians, but they on their own wanted to tag along, wanted to go with Moshe. Okay? And of course, Moshe asked Hashem, can I bring them? And God went, I don't think that's a good idea, Moses. Don't think that's a good idea. But Moses says, oh, but they'll praise you, bless you, they'll see you. Isn't that the whole purpose of creation, that all of humanity should awaken and praise you? Don't think it's a good idea right now, Moses. But Moses brought him. He brought him anyways, right? Even though God said, not a good idea. And that's why I told you last week, there are three messiahs. Will the real Messiah please stand up, right? There are three messiahs in our tradition. There's the Messiah from Joseph, the Messiah from David, the line of King David, and then there's Moshe Mashiach from Moses. Because why? The Tikkun Zohar says, you brought them out, they became the leaders, right? They're on the boards of so many synagogues. We won't mention which. But Moses, you brought them out, you got to fix them. You got to fix them, right? So Moses has to come in the end of days, take care of those boys. I don't know how he's going to do it, because them is tough boys, right? So in any case, that's what we're probably experiencing now. These Erev Rav, they mixed in. They were not Jewish. And just another version of who the Erev Rav was. The Erev Rav was also other slaves from other nations. There were other slaves from other nations that were also in Egypt, And since the master is gone, dead, where are they going to go? So they tagged along Moses and the Jewish people. So they came from other nations. In any case, either or, they were the cause for all of the problems that we experienced in the desert, the main instigators. You got a question? Go for it. Joseph. Okay. And then, of course, I'm going to end off with this, the reason why the Mashiach is taking so long. And there's so much more to speak about this. There's so much text. But it was told from heaven to the Baal Shem Tov that the reason why the Mashiach is taking so long is that we're not expanding our love greatly. We're not expanding our love enough. And it really ties in with this week's parsha also. It's kind of amazing. We were discussing over Shabbos that when Joseph finally revealed himself to his brothers, his brothers really never did say, I'm sorry. If they would have said that, it would have been a total tikkun. It would have fixed the sin of Joseph. And in this week's parsha, at the end, after Yaakov Avinu dies and they go and bury him and they come back and they realize they're not meeting anymore at Sambo's. Okay, we're not meeting it for lunch anymore at the kosher deli. He's not inviting us for lunch anymore. Used to be every Tuesdays was deli lunch, right? Buffet, all you can eat, right? We're not being invited anymore. It must be that, yes, Joseph wants to kill us. He's after us now. It's revenge time. It's payback time. So they made up a story. They fabricated. And they say, Yaakov Avinu, our father, told us just before he died that you should forgive us. And he started crying. He's like, you guys, I'm not in place of God. Right? But he did not say, I forgive you. I'm telling you, the completeness of man is sorry and forgiveness. Okay? That's our completeness. To be willing to really say sorry and to be really willing, the highest of all is to forgive. Right? We have that greatest prayer every night before we go to bed, I forgive every single person that did anything to me in this lifetime, another lifetime, whether they damaged me personally or my money, they stole whatever it is, yada, yada. I forgive completely. Nobody be punished on account of me. Can you imagine saying that with meaning, feeling, and sincerity and enthusiasm and consistency and excitement and seriousness and dedication? Okay. Love. The Baal Shem Tov says a person should spend his entire life developing these 3 things. What are they? I've said this before. You guys should be able to spit it out at 3 a.m. in the morning if I should wake you up. 1, 3 loves. Love of God, love of Torah. And what's the 3rd one? That's right. Love of the Jewish people. Now, love of Hashem, we could work on. Love of Torah, that's almost an easy one because everybody can find some part of Torah that they really love. They really enjoy learning. 3rd one might be a little bit challenging to some people. Just maybe. Okay, I doubt it, of course not. I remember one story. The Baal Shem Tov, he goes through, this crowd of children, and he goes to one of these children, and he goes to his chest, and he rubs his chest, and he says, "Oh, just be a warm-hearted Jew," right? If we can just be a warm-hearted Jew. All right. So in any case, the idea really is to expand that love. That's the only thing that's holding back the Mashiach. But the most important thing, before we go on to the next piece, the most important thing of all, there's a serious disease in Israel, in the world. They call it Jerusalem disease. I think that's what it's called. And really, what does it mean, this Jerusalem disease? It means people think that they're the Messiah. That's right. Right? People think that they're the Messiah. They have this kind of syndrome, Jerusalem syndrome. I think that's what it's called. We used to have one of these guys come to our yeshiva once a month. I kid you not. Okay? Guy who says, "I am the Messiah. I'm here to save you." Right? "Do you not accept me?" Right? I'm telling you. And they would go to the Rabbi, the Rosh Yeshiva, and they go, "I just want to learn, Rabbi." And the Rabbi is so soft-hearted. He thinks the Torah can heal anybody. And he gave him a room. So we had a whole ward of messiahs. Okay, we'd all throw them in the room and let them fight it out. Okay, so in any case, but the reason why I'm saying this is you just have to understand it right. Because he says here something so profound and so big, because really it sets us in a huge direction. And that is, right? He says, Shetzarich kol echad misrael. Every single Jewish person, right, needs to fix and prepare the portion of Mashiach that is applicable to his soul. Again, every single Jewish person has to fix the stature, he calls it the komat Mashiach, the stature of Mashiach that is shaykh to his very soul. Now, I always teach, Kol Yisrael arevim zeh b'zeh. All Yisrael are, we literally translate that as guarantors, this one to this one. But really what it means is we're all blended. Arev, eruv means blend, which means, as my father-in-law put it, that within my soul is a slight sliver of everybody else's soul. And in your soul, in your soul, in your soul, in your soul, and so on. Everybody's soul has a sliver of everybody else's neshama in them. It's totally amazing. That means when you get elevated, Gaval, do you elevate everybody? When a person goes down, then everybody goes down. But the point here is, within everybody is that sliver of the soul of the Mashiach that is shaykh for you, and that you have to fix it. L'takain, you have to do a tikkun on it. You have to prepare it, right? Because we say that Adam, the word Adam is Aleph, Daled, but that's an acronym for the Aleph is Adam, is Adam, Daled is King David, and Mem is Mashiach. He is an all-inclusive soul. He includes all souls. Adam saw, before he sinned, all the generations that would come from him. That is a supercomputer, okay? Every single person, every single generation, this guy saw every single person born, okay? Every single person that would live. He saw it all. In other words, he knew that within his soul, all of humanity was coming. So this soul of Adam, Aleph, Dalet, David, Mashiach, Mem, is an all-inclusive soul that includes all souls. But that means we also are connected to that. Yeah, you have a question? Dead people. Past, present, future. Moses is inside of you. Can you feel the Moses? I feel the Moses. Okay. I feel it. I feel them. Really, the point is, can you feel the Mashiach? Can you get a sense? And you know what it is? It's that unique chelik of Torah, that unique portion in Torah, a unique campaign, a unique message, a unique vibration, a unique soul vibration that we must vibrate, transmit into this world. That is the chelik of Mashiach. Now, a lot of people have unanimously, almost grassroots, come with this idea that really, bottom line, really, if we would be so chutzpah, okay, to come to the realization that we are all the Messiah, really, this generation, and that is the final tikkun, really. When we realize and you look around, everybody is the Mashiach. Can you imagine living your life like that? I'm going to go, and you're talking to somebody, and you're going, oh my gosh, I'm talking to Mashiach. Okay, I'm going to go meet the Mashiach. Okay, this is the Mashiach. Can you imagine now having the realization that all of us together, now we're going to vibrate with this vibration on that level, okay? That we're going to want to really see the Mashiach in everyone, and they will see it in us. That's our elevated state of consciousness. And that's the point that needs to be fixed. It's a realization, it's a global realization that we are all the Mashiach, okay? Right here, right now. Okay, so the idea really here is it's in everyone, okay? But now going back on the text here, we got to start now, okay? Just to give you another tidbit that he brings down, that the Baal Shem Tov said that in the process of the Mashiach's coming, lo yeh harigot, right? Here he says no one will die, but actually, if you'll see it in the Hebrew, lo yiyu harigut, harigot chas v'shalom. Harigut means killing, okay? No one will have to die. It's kind of a little bit convoluted. But here he says no one will have to be killed. There won't be any more killing, okay? So that means that the Mashiach can come without anyone dying. That's in my problem is I heard a statement, someone quoted me that the Communist Party says that America will fall to communism to fire a shot. Not a good comparison, Aleph Havdalos, because here we're talking about kingdom of holiness, okay? With a righteous leader, okay? So, but in any case, it's very powerful because we know that the weapon of the Mashiach is tefillah. Rabbi Nachman brings that down in Torah Dalet, I believe, Gimel or Dalet. And therefore, the mouth is the ultimate weapon. It's always been the ultimate weapon of the Jewish people. And Rabbi Nachman goes so far to say, you're going to love this one, you're going to love this one, okay? That the mouth is so powerful that you be able to tell a gun not to shoot. Imagine that. It happens, right? It happens. Some big Mekubalim, I think even the Babitcher Rebbe, the gun, he said, gun don't shoot. The gun didn't shoot. Okay. Not that you should pull that every day, right? Maybe if we would believe it, we could try it at home. Okay, so now we're going to go into the blessings now. Yaakov Avinu, he wants to tell over the end of days, the lights are coming out. So according to some opinions, he actually did reveal the end of days, but he had to make it where it was in a hidden state. And so he gets to Yisachar. That's where we're at now. So Yisachar, fascinating Torah. So it says, Yisachar chamor gorem voretz ben amishpatayim. Yisachar is a strong ass crouching down between the sheepfolds. Okay? So as we know that Yisachar and Zevulun, they had a relationship. Yisachar were the people who were mamish engrossed in Torah very strongly. Okay, that means like a strong ass crouching down between the sheepfolds. Okay, their total commitment to Torah learning and education was so committed, and they had a pact with Zevulun. Zevulun were the business people. They were on the shores. They were making techelas threads. They were fishing. They were doing imports, exports. They were totally dominated the seas, and therefore they were supporting the whole tribe of Yisachar. It was kind of that relationship. But here he's going to go into the play on the words here, that it's different. You have to, once again, you have to like not go into Yisachar, not go into the 12 tribes. We're going to peel off the masks of matter, and we're going to see a formula here that he's going to reveal. Like I said, those 12 blessings were really insights. And now he's going to reveal one insight. Our work is to go through the rest of the tribes to see where the insight is. And it is brought down in the different sfar, the different books. But here he brings down Yisachar. The word Yisachar, if you cut the word, the way it's spelled, it can actually spell two words in Hebrew. Yesh, Sachar. It's strange because the word Yisachar actually is spelled with two shins. Yeah, right? Some people call it Yisaschar. I think the Sephardim, they got it right. Don't know why the Ashkenazim, they swallow the extra, sin, right? Yisaschar. That's how they pronounce it. I'm like, wow, that was a relief. Somebody actually pronounced it how it's written. A phonetic language should be. But of course, the Ashkenazim, Yisachar. They call it Yisachar. But if you cut the word, it's Yesh Sachar. That means Yesh, there is reward. There is reward, okay? Yesh Sachar. Chamor Gorem. The rest words are Chamor, which Gorem, which means basically they interpret it as a strong ass, but he's going to go into a much more subtler hint, okay? So he says, that is, I'm reading in the text, spiritual reward can be brought forth from the material word. Okay? So the material word, chamor, means material. Chumriut comes from the language of substance. And something is filled with substance. We say chumriut. It's got substance to it. And gorem is actually, he says here, chamor gorem, that gorem is the word for cause. So now if I'm going to reinterpret these four words, there is reward that substance causes. Here's the formula that it's spelling out for us here. In other words, there is reward that substance, physicality, can cause. If you look at the note here, it spells it out. Look at note 150. The name Yisachar can be divided into two words. Yesh, Sachar. There is reward. The very name of Yisachar is related to this idea, as we know. Leah, when she named him, God has given me my reward because I gave my handmaid to my husband. Okay, so she was actually from Zilpah, right? Yisachar. But it means reward. And then the next note here, the Hebrew word donkey, chamor, is related to the word for material substance. Chamor and the word for strong in this word, which is gorem, also has the meaning of to cause or to bring about. So in other words, here he explains it. Go back to the text. That is, spiritual reward can be brought forth from the material world. Meaning what? By eating and drinking, for instance, we uplift the sparks of holiness. There we go. We're back in the sparks again. Big Hasidic concept. Oh, if we can only just integrate that into our lives and just understand that everything has holy sparks in it. And when we eat and we drink, right, we uplift those sparks of holiness that is in those eating and drinking. Okay? And we spoke about this so much because the rest of the verse here, that we're crouching down amidst the different elements of the physical world in the low places. Now, just don't forget, we remember reading when we read in Parshas Miketz about the sparks are like almost encased, like their knees are in the chest and they're folded out here and they cannot extend themselves, almost like a prisoner. And then when we release the sparks, when we eat, when we drink, right, and we do holy things with that energy of that food, so that what are we doing, right? We're creating a reward. It's going to be a reward because we're releasing these sparks, okay? Now we got to go take it to the next step, okay? So the Talmud says, there's a great piece of Chazal, our Chachamim Zichronam Libracha, our wise men of blessed memory, said the Torah is chas, the Torah is compassionate. Here he says, careful with the Jews' money. It's known, the Torah is always chas on Mamon Shel Yisrael. The Torah is considerate. That was the word. The Torah always considers the money of a Jew. Where do you get that from? It brings it down in the Gemara there, which is talking about basically if it's a fast and you have to blow a certain trumpets, because they would blow trumpets, so it should have not a golden mouthpiece. It should have a lesser silver one. But the real source the Rashi brings down over there is that if a person has in their house, they start to get that fungus, that mold, right? That saras in the house, leprosy in the house. So what happens is they call the Cohen. And before the Cohen comes to inspect the house to say, woo, you got a nega in your house, okay? Nega means plague. You got a plague in your house, okay? So before the priest, the Cohen, go tell them, clear everything out of the house. Everything has to be evacuated from the house. Clear it out. Okay? There's reasons for that, but one of the reasons is because if the Cohen comes in and he sees the plague in the house and he says, Tuma, then every single thing in the house is Tuma. And there's certain things which cannot be cleansed, like an earthenware pot. There's no fixing for an earthenware pot if it contracts Tuma, this uncleanliness. And so the Cohen tells them to clear everything out of the house because the Torah is considerate of the money of Israel. That's the general idea, okay? So, but still, we have to know the deeper reason. So why, he says? Because in everything a Jew uses, be it clothing, be it food, or utensils, kelim, your chainsaw, that's right. There is a spiritual life force from which he derives pleasure, okay? In other words, really we know, and we've studied in the Sefer, in the book of Tanya, in the gate of Shara Yichud Ve'emunah, the gate of unification in faith, that really every single thing is made up of the holy letters. That is imbibing everything with and it's animating everything every single second with its animation. It's the life force that is contained within a thing. We cannot see it, but it is there. Only certain people, they have on the level where they can see the letters through all of the material, okay? But it is a life force that is inside of everything. That's really where the person, the soul, gets his pleasure from. Without this energy, the object could not exist, like I told you. When God said, let there be a firmament in the heavens. So God didn't say the statement and then walk away, and then the statement was gone. That statement and the letters of those statements, the energy of those 10 statements of creation, let there be trees and grasses, right? Let there be a moon, the sun, let there be luminaries. All of those 10 statements are constantly being said every moment by the eternal isness of the universe, the creative intelligence that gives everything its animation, and it's constantly giving it animation through the letters and the transmutation of those letters and the transposition of those letters, that the letters go through certain elements of changing and interchanging and diffusing in order to become the experience of a cup of coffee. Okay? It wouldn't exist without the holiness of the life force that is within it. Furthermore, these sparks of holiness are connected to the person's own soul, which explains why one person loves one thing and another hates it, right? And I'm like, oh, thank you, God. No wonder I was going to a therapist why I hate tuna so much, right? With 10 years of therapy, why I just can't stand tuna, okay? And then finally I read this piece in the Baal Shem Tov, and I'm like, wow, I don't need therapy anymore, right? Because I understand why I don't like tuna, okay? So that's why some people love tuna. I've got daughters who I want to kick them out of my house because they love tuna. They shouldn't even be in my family. Definitely not have my last name, okay? Like, you're a Cohen? You love tuna? You're a Cohen? They love chocolate? They're in, okay? Thank God all my kids love chocolate. We're good, okay? So, because I love chocolate, right? So chocolate is good, okay? So I've got sparks of holiness that are shaykh, that are appropriate to me, that are in that chocolate, okay? And you who have a tuna fish fetish, right? You're eating, sleeping, and drinking tuna all day long, right? That's because you have sparks of holiness in the tuna that's appropriate for you, okay? So that's why one person loves one thing and another person hates it. I like these kind of clothes. This person hates those kind of clothes, right? He's attracted to a different kind of clothes, right? Why is it? I mean, this is amazing. Why are there differences in people? Why they like this and this, that? It explains why people like these things and hate those things. It's because why? That there are sparks in those things that are for the person, his own completion. They are calling him, and they are appropriate to him in order to be elevated, okay? And even when a person uses the object or he eats the food just to sustain himself, he can still repair its sparks. If he later serves God with the strength, right, that he received from it. In other words, we always have to eat, and it's a real retraining of our thinking. It's a huge retraining because we get so caught in the habit of eating for the sake of eating. But do we really now, we got to shift that whole reality to think, I really want to do chesed. That cookie is really calling my name. Maybe the cookie's not calling your name. Maybe that cookie's not for you, okay? No, I must redeem the holy sparks in that cookie, right? Don't stop me from redeeming the holy sparks in that cookie, right? So the idea here is, even if you just like the base idea, the base concept is, I'm going to eat this in order to get energy, in order to do good deeds, good for the world, think good thoughts, okay? It's very important, because if you miss the thought, then actually the sparks take you down. That's right. It's really scary. It's a scary part of this class here. The sparks could take you down. It happened, right? There was a high priest. He was the high priest for 80 years. He went into the Holy of Holies, came out clean, right? He was the hero. He was the holiest guy. And in the end, he fell to being a heretic. How did that happen? I finally saw it today. It's because when he ate the kochim, he ate holy meat. He didn't eat it with the right intention. On his level, he didn't eat it with the right intention. So what happened was the opposite. It dragged him down, okay? So the idea here is all of these things that we use, the clothing, the cars that we buy. Why am I attracted to this car and not that car, right? I'm very attracted to a Tesla, right? Can't afford it. So I take a Toyota, okay? But some people, Toyotas are ugly, right? So why? Because there are sparks in that thing for you to elevate, okay? So, of course, we want to eat for the sake of elevation, and we want to do good things with that. So this explains, this is great, why sometimes after a person has repaired the sparks in an object related to his soul, God removes it from him and he gives it to someone else. And it could happen in unlimited ways. For sure, if your shirt wears out, your clothes wear out and you give it to Goodwill, Salvation Army, whatever, right? So therefore it goes there and it goes on the shelf wherever. And therefore somebody else can use it because those other people have to elevate the sparks that are in it, even if they're not Jewish. Sparks must be elevated. Okay? Or let's say, right, a vessel breaks, right? You have a great thing in your house. I had a lamp. We had a beautiful lamp. We brought it all the way. We had 2 lamps, pottery lamps, beautiful, old style, like medieval looking, right? Worth a lot. You can't get them anymore. One broke. Boom. I broke it. I was the one, right? And you know what classically happens when a glass breaks? Everybody know? What happens? What's the instant thing that somebody should say? Mazel Tov. Now, it's an interesting why people say Mazel Tov. That's how I was trained in my religious upbringing, not in my pre-religious upbringing. In my religious upbringing, it was Mazel Tov. Anytime a glass breaks, I still do it. Mazel Tov. Okay? So, classically, the reason why that I thought was because at the wedding, at the chuppah, you know, we all break a glass. The custom is always to break the glass. Now, the interesting is, why do people break the glass? Is people break the glass because it's a remembrance of the temple that was destroyed, the temple in Jerusalem. You could be happy, but you can't be that happy if we don't have a temple and we don't have the Shekhinah, the divine presence. We're still in exile. So the breaking of the glass under the chuppah is kind of like that remembrance. That's just a little bit of a, you know, killjoy, just a little bit. Take it down a notch to remember the temple. So they break the glass, and really you're supposed to wait a second and then say Mazel Tov. Okay? No, of course, people say Mazel Tov right away. We got a new reason why Mazel Tov. We got a new reason. The new reason is the glass breaks, the vase breaks, whatever it is, right? You go Mazel Tov because why? The sparks have been elevated. There's no more reason for there to be sparks that you need to elevate it anymore. Thank God we can now release the Holy Soul that was in this earthenware vessel, and he can go to his place. What an insight. What a shift of perception, right? You can look at it totally differently, and you can say, wow, thank you, God. We helped to release another neshama to go to its next destination, okay? So just to finish this paragraph, this explains why sometimes after a person has repaired the sparks in an object related to his soul, God removes it from him and gives it to someone else, because it still contains other sparks from a different source. In other words, there's somebody else has to fix those sparks. So it has to go to someone else. You know how many cars, when I was in Texas, they got junked and had to go to the junkyard, right? Because somebody else, went to the pick and pull. So these sparks had to go in, go wherever they needed to go. So now going on here, okay, the Baal Shem Tov said, this is kind of an astounding line when I first read it. It says, we eat people, we drink people, and we use people. It's kind of like, what? Okay, that's right. We eat people, we drink people, we use people. What is it talking about? Now, simply put, of course, we're talking about people, souls of people, who are reincarnated into objects. We all know that, okay? Into food, that's right. They're reincarnated into food, and they're reincarnated into liquids, and they're reincarnated even in inanimate objects, even stones and rocks, okay? If you need to read some scary books, you can go read The Spirit Speak, Rabbi Yehuda Fataya. I think it's called Minchat Yehuda in English, Minchat Yehuda. Talks all about all kinds of souls that got reincarnated into inanimate objects, food and plants and the like. But here he's saying we eat people, we drink people, we use people, referring to the sparks that are in each thing. Therefore, I'm just going to continue the paragraph before we do the note. Therefore, we should be careful. Why? Because of the sparks they contain. Okay, because why? We should have compassion on our own sparks of holiness. And this is one reason why, in a different kind of sense, but Yaakov Avinu, Jacob our forefather, when he was finally coming back to meet Esav after being with his uncle Lavan for 22 years, he's finally coming back and he's going to meet his brother Esav, Esau. And in the middle of the night, he crossed this river, Yabok, and he had to go back. And he had to go back and get some empty jars. And that's when he wrestled with the angel. Most people know the whole segment where Jacob wrestles with this angel, this man, until morning, right? And this whole dialogue. And he went back for empty jars. And I'm going, come on, man. What are you going back for those empty jars for? What's in the jars? So just simply speaking, why a tzaddik, why for a righteous person, or anybody for that matter, their possessions mean something, because there could be sparks of holiness that are applicable to him in order to elevate. And until they're taken from him, or they're absolutely not used anymore, or you can sell them at eBay, right? There are still some sparks in them that you are responsible for elevating. And that's why the Torah is considerate of people's money, of the money of Israel. Don't forget, we started off with that line. The Torah is considerate of the money of Israel, which means because the money of Israel, the possessions that people have, is for their own completion, to elevate the holy sparks in them. It's great because now we understand why you like some things and hate others, and that's perfectly fine, right? Because there are sparks that he has to elevate that I don't have to elevate. There's sparks that I have to elevate that he does not have to elevate. Okay? So with that, we will end. I will let you guys ask some questions, and I'm going to leave this other room that I'm in. If anybody has any other questions, yes.